For 20 years, he woke up before the sun. For 20 years, he worked until his bones ached. For 20 years, he believed one simple truth, that the boy who ran into his arms every evening, the boy who called him dad, the boy who carried his last name was his son. And then, one hospital test destroyed everything he thought he knew. Michael Turner was not a famous man. No headlines ever carried his name. No awards ever found his hands. But in a quiet American town that most people passed through without noticing, Michael Turner was the man who never missed a shift. Security supervisor at a nearly forgotten textile warehouse. Night shift, graveyard hours. While others slept, Michael guarded empty buildings and humming machines. He wasn't chasing dreams, he was protecting one. Every morning at 6:12 a.m., his rust-colored pickup rolled into the same narrow driveway. Every morning at 6:19 a.m., he shut the engine off without making a sound. Every morning at 6:25 a.m., he opened the front door quietly, so he won't wake the child sleeping inside. That child was the reason his life moved with such precision. That child was the center of everything. Michael met Laura on accident. She worked afternoons at a dry cleaner across from the diner where he took his post-shift coffee. She tied her hair back with tired fingers, smiled with exhausted kindness, asked how his night was, and actually waited for the answer. They talked through glass doors and paper receipts, then through late dinners and borrowed weekends. 3 months into knowing each other, Laura showed up at his door shaking. Michael still remembered how her hands trembled when she spoke, "I am pregnant." Time stopped. Michael didn't ask how, didn't calculate dates, didn't demand explanations. He only asked one question. "Do you want to keep the baby?" Laura nodded through tears. 2 days later, he proposed. They married at the courthouse with borrowed rings and borrowed courage. People whispered the word mistake. Michael called it responsibility. The delivery room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Michael stood at Laura's side through every scream and contraction. When the baby finally arrived, he cried louder than the newborn himself. A boy, small, red, furious at the world. The nurse placed him in Michael's arms first, and without thinking, without planning, without hesitation, Michael whispered the words that would shape the next 2 decades of his life. "I've got you, son." That night, he named the boy Ivan. Sleep disappeared from Michael's life. Diapers replaced dinners, bills replaced rest. Money was always tight, but Ivan grew, and Michael grew with him. He learned to cook with one hand while holding a baby bottle in the other. He learned to rock a crib with his foot while studying repair manuals for his second job. He learned how to be quiet in pain. When Ivan said his first word, it wasn't mama, it was da. Michael cried alone in the garage so no one would see him break. Laura never fully recovered after childbirth. Her smiles became forced. Her eyes wandered when she thought no one noticed. She stayed out late, took long errands, answered mysterious phone calls and whispered. Michael never accused her. He thought, "She's tired. She's overwhelmed. She needs time." Until one night, she never came home. Michael found the note on the kitchen counter. 5 words written in shaking ink. "I am broken. I am sorry." That was it. No explanation, no goodbye. Michael stood in that kitchen for over an hour without moving, even slept in the next room. 3 years old, snoring softly. That night, Michael became a single father, without warning, without preparation, without support. From that moment on, Michael became everything: mother and father, provider and protector, teacher and comforter. There were nights he slept on the floor beside Ivan's bed during fevers, days he worked 24 hours straight to cover daycare, birthdays he baked cakes himself, uneven and crooked with love. When Ivan asked, "Why doesn't mommy come back?" Michael answered, "Because sometimes adults get lost, but I am not going anywhere." And he never did. Ivan grew into something extraordinary: respectful, kind, quietly ambitious. He helped elderly neighbors with groceries, worked part-time through high school to pay his own school supplies, never complained. One evening in senior year, after getting his college acceptance, Ivan hugged Michael and said, "Everything good in me came from you." Michael drove to work that night and cried in the parking lot of the warehouse with his forehead on the steering wheel. He believed his life had meaning. On Ivan's 20th birthday, during a college soccer match, Ivan collapsed on the field. No warning, no impact, just sudden darkness. He was rushed to the hospital. Doctors said it was a rare heart rhythm disorder. Surgery was needed. Blood would be required. Michael volunteered instantly, without a second thought. The nurse called Michael in privately. She checked his chart, checked Ivan's chart, checked again. Her face tightened. She said nothing, just walked away. Later that night, a doctor entered the waiting room with serious eyes and careful words. "Mr. Turner, are you Ivan's biological father?" Michael answered without hesitation, "Of course I am." The doctor paused. He didn't smile, and in that pause, a quiet danger entered the room. "Your blood types shouldn't be compatible," the doctor said softly. The words sounded technical, harmless, but they fell like stones. Michael laughed nervously. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to confirm." A DNA test was ordered. Immediately, 2 samples, 3 days of waiting. Michael said nothing to Ivan, and those were the longest 3 days of his entire life. The doctor called them into a private room. White walls, cold chairs, sealed envelope. Michael already knew. When the doctor opened the envelope and spoke, the words sounded distant. Probability of paternity, 0%. 20 years of fatherhood erased by a decimal. 0. Not likely, not low. 0. Ivan stared at the paper. His hands shook. Michael's lungs forgot how to work. The doctor explained, "Your wife was likely pregnant before marriage." Michael didn't react. He just stared at the floor as if it had turned into unfamiliar ground. In that moment, 2 lives lost their foundation. One man lost his identity as a father by blood. One boy lost the certainty of who he came from. They walked home in silence. Ivan walked 10 steps ahead. Michael followed. Neither spoke. The house felt smaller when they entered. The walls that once held laughter now felt like witnesses to a lie. Ivan finally whispered, "Am I still your son?" Michael tried to answer, but no sound came. Michael walked into the garage and closed the door. And for the first time in 20 years, he collapsed, not in anger, not in rage, in grief. He didn't cry for betrayal. He cried for the death of the truth he had lived by. He cried for the boy who would now question his place in the world. He cried for the man who no longer knew who he was.